The flagship was called the Eternal Light, and it floated in the darkness of space like a palace made of glass and silver. Lieutenant Park stood near a window and watched the stars. She was the only human on this ship, and she felt it in every moment. They were tall, very tall. They stood almost 3 meters high, and their skin looked like crystal that had been polished for 1,000 years. Each one had 3 eyes that glowed soft blue, and when they moved slowly like they had all the time in the universe. Because they lived for 800 years. Humans were lucky to see 90. Was 32 years old. She was practically a baby. She turned away from the window and walked down the corridor toward the meeting chamber. Her boots made soft sounds on the floor. The she passed did not look at her. They never looked at her. It was like she was invisible, or maybe like she was furniture, something that existed but did not matter. The meeting chamber was large and round, with a high ceiling that showed the stars through transparent panels. A long table sat in the center, and around it sat the members of the peace delegation. There were also 2 ambassadors, short, wide creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. And there was Ambassador, the leader of the human delegation. Was a careful man. He had gray in his hair and lines on his face, and he always spoke quietly. He had told many times to stay quiet, to stay small, to not make trouble. Humans were new to galactic politics. They had only joined the greater community 50 years ago. They had no power, no ancient history, no respect. "We are guests here," had said. "We smile, we listen, we learn. That is how we survive." Understood this. She did not like it, but she understood it. She took her seat at the far end of the table, away from the important people. High Prelate sat at the head. He was the commander of this mission, the voice of the Dominion. His crystal skin was darker than the others, almost purple, and his 3 eyes burned with cold light. He was over 600 years old. He had seen empires rise and fall. To him, humans were nothing, less than nothing. The meeting began. They talked about trade routes and border agreements and the proper protocols for communication between species. Listened and took notes because that was her job. Military. It was a fancy title that meant she was here to watch, learn, and report back to Earth. But was good at watching, very good. She noticed things the others missed. She saw the way one of the ambassadors kept checking a device hidden in his sleeve. She saw the way Said, a young named, seemed nervous every time the conversation turned to security matters. And she saw the data that crossed her personal terminal, intelligence reports that the others ignored. The Hollow Fang. That was the name of a rogue faction that had been causing trouble in this sector. They were raiders, pirates, killers. Nobody knew exactly what they were, some kind of biomechanical hybrid, creatures that had been built for war and then escaped their creators. They attacked without warning and left nothing alive. Had been tracking their movements for weeks. She had noticed a pattern. The Hollow Fang always struck during times of distraction, celebrations, transitions, moments when security was relaxed. Like now, like this peace delegation. She raised her hand. High Prelate turned his 3 eyes toward her. The look on his face was the same look someone might give a dog that had suddenly started talking. Surprise, followed by annoyance. "The human wishes to speak," he said. It was not a question, it was barely an acknowledgement. "Yes, High Prelate," kept her voice calm. "I have been reviewing intelligence reports about the Hollow Fang. Their attack patterns suggest—" The Hollow Fang made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like glass scraping against stone. "You speak of raiders, criminals. They are beneath our concern. With respect, High Prelate, they have been moving closer to this sector. Their last 3 attacks were along the route to Waypoint 7, the station where we are meeting tomorrow." Waved one of his long, crystalline hands. "Impossible. We are in the holy cycle of light. The sacred texts are clear. No enemy would dare strike during this time. The Ascended have promised protection." The Ascended. That was what they called their gods or their ancestors or both. They had a book called The Words of the Ascended, and they treated it like absolute truth. Every species in the galaxy was listed in that book, along with their strengths, weaknesses, and proper place in the cosmic order. Had seen the entry for humans, it was short, dismissive. Soft, brief-lived, fragile vessels of warm fluid, suitable for labor, not for war. Suitable for labor, like horses, like machines, not like people. High Prelate tried again. The Hollow Fang does not follow your sacred calendar. They. Enough's voice was cold. You forget your place, human. Your kind has been part of the greater community for barely a heartbeat. You do not understand the ways of the galaxy. The words of the Ascended have guided us for 10,000 years. They have never been wrong. Caught's eye from across the table. His look was clear. Stop. Sit down. Be quiet. Sat down, she was quiet. But she did not stop watching. After the meeting, she walked through the corridors of the eternal light and made her way to the communications room. She sent a message to the human security team on Waypoint 7. She told them to be ready. She told them to increase patrols. She told them that something was coming. She did not know if they would listen. She did not know if it would matter. Later that night, as the ship moved through space toward the station, lay in her small quarters and stared at the ceiling. She thought about what it said, about the sacred texts, about humans being fragile. She thought about her father, who had worked in the mines on Colony 7 until his lungs gave out. He had worked 18-hour days for 30 years. He had never complained. She thought about her mother, who had raised 4 children alone after her father died, who had worked 2 jobs and still found time to help neighbors, who had smiled even when there was nothing to smile about. She thought about herself, about the training, about the pain, about all the times she had been knocked down and gotten back up. Fragile. She almost laughed. Humans were many things. They were soft, yes. They bled easily. They broke easily. They died easily compared to species like the. But fragile. No, fragile things stayed broken. Fragile things gave up. Had never given up in her life. The ship arrived at Waypoint 7 the next morning. The station was huge, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that hung in the darkness between stars. Thousands of beings moved through its corridors, traders, diplomats, travelers of every species. The delegation was escorted to the central chamber where the peace talks would continue. Guards stood at every door. Security was tight. But still watched, she still noticed. She noticed the way some of the guards seemed nervous. She noticed the way the station's lights flickered, just for a moment. She noticed the way the air recyclers sounded different than they should. Something was wrong. She tried to tell. He patted her shoulder and told her not to worry. She tried to tell the young aide, looked at her with confusion, and asked why a human would concern herself with such matters. She tried to find the station's security chief. He was too busy to see her. So did what she always did. She prepared. She checked her weapon. She studied the station's layout. She found the exits and the places where someone might hide. The meeting began. Spoke about peace and cooperation and the eternal wisdom of the Ascended. Everyone listened and nodded and pretended to agree. And then the lights went out. The station shuddered, a deep vibration that felt in her bones. Emergency alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed in the darkness. Stood up, what is happening? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Knew. She pulled her weapon and moved toward the door. Behind her, she heard calling her name. She heard the praying to their gods. But the gods were not coming. The Hollow Fang was. The first explosion tore through the eastern corridor of Waypoint 7. Felt the shockwave hit her like a giant fist. She grabbed the wall and held on while the floor shook beneath her feet. Screams filled the air. The emergency lights painted everything in red. Smoke poured through the ventilation systems, and the smell of burning metal filled Snow's. She had been right, she had warned them, and now it was happening. The Hollow Fang had come, moved through the chaos with her weapon raised. Around her, people ran in every direction, stumbled through the smoke, their crystal skin flashing in the emergency lights. Ambassadors shouted in their own language. Station workers tried to seal doors that would not close. Another explosion. Closer this time. The ceiling cracked and pieces of metal fell like rain. Found Ambassador on the floor near the meeting chamber. He was bleeding from a cut on his head, and his leg was trapped under a fallen beam. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide with pain. He gasped, "What is?" "Don't talk," holstered her weapon and grabbed the beam. It was heavy, too heavy for a normal person to lift, but was not thinking about what was normal. She was thinking about dying if she did not move this beam. She pulled, her muscles screamed. Her back felt like it was going to break, but she pulled harder and the beam shifted and dragged himself free. "Can you walk?" I think so." "Then walk, we need to find cover." She pulled him to his feet and put his arm over her shoulder. He was taller than her and heavier than her, but she carried his weight anyway. That was what you did. You carried what needed to be carried. They moved through the corridor. Bodies lay on the floor, some dead, some wounded, some just unconscious. Wanted to stop and help them all, but she could not. She had to keep moving. She had to find a safe place. Behind them she heard new sounds. Not explosions, something worse. Clicking, grinding, the sound of metal legs on metal floors. The Hollow Fang had seen pictures of them in intelligence reports, but the pictures did not prepare her for the reality. They were nightmares made flesh. Each one stood 2 meters tall, and they walked on 4 legs like giant insects. Their bodies were a twisted mixture of organic tissue and machine parts. Metal plates covered muscles that pulsed with unnatural life. Their heads had no faces, just sensors that glowed red in the darkness, and mouths full of teeth that were also blades. They moved fast, too fast. Pulled into a side room and closed the door. It was some kind of storage area, filled with boxes and crates. She pushed behind a stack of containers and raised her weapon. "Stay down," she whispered. "Stay quiet." She heard the creatures pass by outside. Click, 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 the sound of death walking. They moved on for now. Let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Then she checked wounds. The cut on his head was not deep, but he was going into shock. His hands were shaking and his skin was cold. He whispered, "The others, we have to." "We will, but first we need to get you stable." She used a piece of cloth from a supply kit to bandage his head. It was not perfect, but it would stop the bleeding. Then she made him drink water and told him to breathe slowly. "You did this before," said, "in combat." "Yes. I forgot. I forgot that you were a soldier before you were a diplomat's assistant." Almost smiled. "Most people do." She left him hidden behind the crates and moved to the door. She opened it just a crack and looked outside. The corridor was empty now, but she could hear sounds in the distance. Gunfire, screaming, the shriek of the Hollow Fang. She needed to find the others. She needed to help. Moved through the station like a ghost. She stayed in the shadows. She listened before every corner. She counted her bullets and knew she did not have enough. She found in a maintenance room. The young aide was huddled in a corner, her 3 eyes wide with terror. Her crystal skin had cracked in several places, and she was bleeding a fluid that looked like liquid silver. The flinched, then she saw and stared. "Human, you are alive." "Yes, are you hurt badly?" "I know, I do not think so, the cracks will heal," looked at with something like wonder. "How are you here? How did you survive?" "I moved fast. You need to move fast too. Can you stand?" Stood. She was shaking, but she was standing. "Good, stay behind me. Stay quiet." They moved through the station together, led and followed. There was much taller than the human, but somehow seemed bigger. There was something in the way she moved, something in the way she watched, like a predator pretending to be prey. They found other survivors along the way, a wounded trader with 2 broken arms, a station worker who had hidden inside a ventilation shaft, a guard whose weapon had been destroyed. Gathered them all. She told them where to go, how to move, when to stop, and when to run. Watched all of this with growing confusion. "Why are you doing this?" she asked during a quiet moment. "Doing what?" "Leading, protecting. You are human. The texts say humans are. I mean," she stopped, embarrassed. "The texts say humans are fragile," said. "I know, I read the entry." "Then why do you not act fragile?" Looked at her. "Because the texts are wrong." They reached the central atrium. This was the heart of the station, a large open space where all the main corridors met, and here they found the worst of it. Bodies everywhere, and in station workers torn apart by the hollow fang. Blood of every color painted the walls, and in the center of the carnage stood the delegation, surrounded by the creatures that had killed so many. High Prelate was on his knees. His crystal skin was cracked and his 3 eyes stared at nothing. His mouth moved, forming words that could not hear. Prayers, probably. Prayers to gods who were not coming. Around him were the other delegates. Some were wounded, some were dead, all of them were helpless. And standing before them was the leader of the Hollow Fang. It was larger than the others, much larger. Almost 3 meters tall, it towered over even the... Its body was covered in armor made from the bones and metal of its victims. Its face was a skull wrapped in cables, and its eyes burned with red fire. The Render, that was the name had seen in the intelligence reports, the leader, the most dangerous of them all. It was speaking. Its voice was like grinding gears, like metal screaming against metal. "Your gods promised you protection," the Render said. "Your sacred texts told you we would not come. Tell me, Prelate, where are your gods now?" Did not answer. He could not answer. His whole world had been shattered. Everything he believed, everything he trusted had failed him. Looked at the scene. She counted the enemies, 12 hollow fang creatures plus the Render. She counted her bullets, not enough, not nearly enough. But she also counted the survivors, the delegates, the wounded, the people who would die if she did nothing. She started to move forward. Grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? What needs to be done? You cannot, you are human, you are fragile." "Yes, I know." Pulled her arm free and stepped out of cover. The Render turned, its red eyes fixed on her. A small human standing alone in the doorway. It was almost funny. Almost. "Another one," the Render said. "Another soft creature that bleeds and breaks. Have you come to die with the rest?" Raised her weapon. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. "No," she said. "I came to fight." Behind her whispered something in her own language. A prayer, maybe, or a curse, or both. Did not hear it. She was already moving. The Render walked toward it, and the sound it made was almost like laughter. Metal grinding against metal. Gears turning inside a broken machine. "Brave," it said. "Stupid, but brave. Your kind is new to the galaxy. Perhaps you do not understand what we are." "I understand enough." Kept walking. Her weapon was raised, her eyes fixed on the creature's center mass. She was thinking about angles, about distance, about timing. Her mind was working faster than it had ever worked before. "Then you understand that you cannot win." "Maybe, but you're going to remember me." The Render raised its arm, not an arm like humans had. This was a weapon grown from flesh and metal, a plasma cannon that could vaporize armor, could burn through steel walls, could kill anything. It fired. Tried to dodge. She was fast. Faster than most humans, faster than most soldiers, but the plasma bolt was faster. It hit her in the chest. The impact lifted her off her feet. She flew backward through the air and hit the ground hard. The sound she made was not a scream. It was more like all the air leaving her body at once. Silence fell over the atrium. The hollow fang creatures stopped moving. The surviving delegates stared. Even the render paused, watching the small human body lying on the floor. Screamed. It was a high, thin sound, full of horror and grief. She tried to run forward, but one of the other survivors held her back. "She's dead," the survivor whispered. "She has to be dead." High Prelate looked at the body. For just a moment, something changed in his eyes, something like guilt, something like regret. He had dismissed her warnings. He had called her fragile, and now she lay dead on the floor, killed trying to save him. "Another soft creature," the render said. "They always think they are special. They always think they are different, but they all die the same way." It turned back to the delegates. It raised its weapon again. And then's hand moved. It was small at first, just her fingers twitching against the floor, like a reflex, like the last movement of a dying body. But then her other hand moved, and her arm. And then Park opened her eyes. The render spun around. Its sensors were flashing, processing information that did not make sense. The plasma bolt had hit center mass. The damage should have been lethal, should have been instant. But the human was moving. Did not think about what she was doing. She could not think. Her mind was filled with white noise, with static, with something that was not quite pain because her brain had shut off the pain. Evolution had given humans this gift, the ability to turn off their own suffering when survival demanded it. She rolled onto her side. Her chest was a ruin of burned flesh and blood. She could smell herself cooking, could feel things inside her that should not move, but her arms still worked. Her legs still worked. She pushed herself up, made a sound that was not quite a word. The other survivors backed away like they were seeing a ghost. Even the hollow-fanged creatures seemed uncertain, their red eyes flickering. "Impossible," the render said. "My sensors confirm lethal damage. Your heart should have stopped. Your organs should have failed." Got to her knees. Blood dripped from her mouth. Her vision was blurring at the edges, but she forced it to focus. "I don't care," she said. Her voice was a rasp, a broken whisper. "What your sensors say." She got to her feet. The render fired again, this time twisted, and the bolt caught her shoulder instead of her chest. It spun her around. It tore away flesh and muscle. It should have knocked her down again. She stumbled, but she did not fall. "Stop," one of the delegates whispered. "Please stop, you'll die." Did not stop. She reached for her belt. Her pistol was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos, but her hand found something else. The combat knife that every human soldier carried. Not much of a weapon against creatures made of metal and bone, but it was something. "Is that all?" she asked. The render stared at her. For the first time there was something in its voice that might have been doubt. "You cannot be standing. You cannot be conscious. The pain alone should have." Pain took a step forward. Her legs were shaking. Her body was dying, but she took another step. Pain is just information. That's what they taught us in training. Pain tells you that something is wrong, but you get to decide what to do about it. Another step. The render took a step back. The killer that had slaughtered dozens of beings was retreating from a dying human woman. "What are you?" it demanded. Showed her teeth. It was not a smile. It was something older, something from before humans learned to be civilized. "I'm human. We don't know when to quit." She attacked. It was not graceful. It was not skilled. It was an animal throwing itself at a predator, knowing it would probably die, not caring anymore. She was beyond caring, beyond fear, beyond everything except the need to fight. The render swung at her. Its arm caught her side and she heard her ribs crack. But she was inside its guard now, close enough to touch, and her knife found a gap in its armor. The blade sank in. The render screamed, not with pain, because did not think it felt pain, but with surprise, with outrage. How dare this soft creature hurt it? How dare this fragile thing fight back? It grabbed her and threw her across the room. She hit a wall and slid down, leaving a trail of blood on the metal. And then she got up again. Was crying. Tears like liquid silver ran down her crystal face. She had never seen anything like this. In all the stories, in all the sacred texts, there was nothing about a creature that would not stay down. The words of the Ascended said that humans were fragile, that they broke easily, that they were suitable for labor, not for war. The words of the Ascended were wrong. "Stay down," the render commanded. There was something different in its voice now, something that might have been fear. "Stay down and I will make your death quick." Stood, her knife was still in her hand. Her blood was pooling on the floor beneath her. She had minutes left, maybe less, but she was standing. "No," she said. She charged again. The render met her with claws and blades and all the weapons built into its terrible body. It cut her. It burned her. It broke her bones and tore her flesh. Any other species would have stopped, would have surrendered, would have let death take them. But humans were not any other species. Humans had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. A planet of predators and parasites, of diseases and disasters. And they had survived, not because they were strong, not because they were fast, not because they were armored or venomous or able to regenerate. They survived because they refused to die. Hit the ground again, and got up again and again and again. Each time slower, each time weaker, each time leaving more of her blood on the floor. But each time she got up. The other hollow fang creatures had stopped moving entirely. They were watching, learning, processing this new information. The human was supposed to be weak. The human was supposed to be fragile, but the human would not stop. The render finally caught her. Its massive hand closed around her throat and lifted her off the ground. She dangled there, her feet kicking at nothing, her hands still trying to find something to fight. "Why?" the render asked. It sounded almost curious. "Why do you keep fighting? You cannot win. You are dying. Why not accept it?" Looked at it with eyes that were almost blind. She could not speak. Its hand was crushing her throat. But she could still move her arm, could still grip her knife. With the last of her strength, she drove the blade into the render's primary neural cluster, right between the eyes, right through the armor that protected its brain. The render went rigid. Its hand opened, fell. This time she did not get up. But neither did the render. It stood frozen for one long moment, then crashed to the floor beside her. Its red eyes flickered once, twice, and went dark. The leader of the Hollow Fang was dead, killed by a creature that its own sensors said should have been dead 10 times over. In the silence that followed, walked forward. She moved past the other Hollow Fang creatures, who seemed lost without their leader. She knelt beside the small human body lying on the floor. Was not moving, was not breathing. Her chest was still and her eyes were closed. Reached out and touched her face. It was still warm. Humans were always warm. Their bodies burned with internal fire, turned food into energy, kept fighting until the very last moment. "I am sorry," whispered. "I am so sorry. I should have believed you." And then, against all logic, against all reason, against everything the sacred text said was possible, Park took a breath. The remaining Hollow Fang creatures fled after their leader fell. Without the render's commands, they became confused, uncertain. They ran back to their ships and disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving behind only the dead and the dying. And one human, who should have been dead but was not, stayed with while the others called for help. She watched the human breathe shallow, weak breaths that seemed impossible. The wounds on her body were terrible, burns and cuts and broken bones, blood everywhere, so much blood. Yet she breathed. Her mind was somewhere else. She drifted in a place between life and death, and in that place she remembered. She remembered being 12 years old on Colony 7, the mining accident, the tunnel collapse that trapped her underground for 6 days. No food, almost no water, just darkness and fear and the weight of a planet pressing down on her. She had been scared, so scared. She had cried until she had no more tears. She had screamed until her voice was gone. And then, when the crying and screaming did nothing, she had started to think. She found drops of water condensing on the tunnel walls. She licked them like an animal. She moved rocks, one at a time, until she made a small space where she could breathe better. And she waited. And she survived. When the rescue team finally broke through, they found a small girl sitting calmly in the darkness. She had lost weight. She was dehydrated, but she was alive. "How did you survive?" they asked her. "I decided not to die," she said. She remembered being 22 years old in military training. Her drill instructor was a man named Captain Lee. He was hard and cold, and he pushed his soldiers until they broke. "Pain is information," he would say during training exercises. "Nothing more. Your body sends signals to your brain. Your brain interprets those signals, and then you decide what to do." Had been running until her lungs burned, running until her legs felt like they were made of fire. She wanted to stop. Every part of her body told her to stop. "Don't listen to your body," Captain Lee shouted. "Your body wants to survive. But survival is not the same as living. Sometimes you have to push past survival. Sometimes you have to hurt yourself to save others." She kept running. She finished the course. She collapsed at the end and could not move for an hour, but she finished. "Good," Captain Lee said, standing over her. "Now you understand. You are not your pain. You are not your fear. You are the thing that decides what to do with pain and fear." She remembered being 28 years old in her first real combat. Her squad had been ambushed on a colony world. Half of them died in the first minute. The survivors were pinned down, wounded, out of ammunition. Had 3 broken ribs. She had a piece of metal in her thigh. She had been burned on her arms and face. And she had 2 wounded soldiers who could not walk. "Leave us," one of them said. His name was, and he had been her friend. "You can make it alone. Leave us and get help." Looked at him. "No. You'll die if you." "Then I'll die, but I'm not leaving you." She carried them. 18 kilometers through hostile territory. 18 kilometers with broken ribs and a wounded leg and burns that made every movement agony. She carried one on her back and dragged the other with her arms. She stopped to rest only when she could not move anymore, and then she moved anyway. It took 2 days. By the end, she was not thinking anymore. She was just walking, just putting one foot in front of the other. Her mind had shut down everything except the need to keep going. When she reached the base, she delivered her soldiers to the medical team. And then she collapsed and did not wake up for 3 days. "How did you do it?" the doctors asked her later. "The physical damage alone should have stopped you. The pain should have been unbearable." Looked at them with tired eyes. "I decided that pain did not matter. I decided that my soldiers mattered more." Now, lying on the floor of Waypoint 7, drifted in her memories. She felt gentle hands lifting her, heard voices speaking in languages she did not understand, felt movement as she was carried somewhere. Far away in her mind, she saw her mother's face. Her mother had died 5 years ago, but in this moment between life and death, could see her clearly. "My daughter," her mother said, "you always were the stubborn one." "I'm tired, Mom." "I know, but you can't rest yet. People need you." "I'm dying." Her mother smiled. It was the same smile remembered from childhood, warm and strong and full of certainty. "Humans don't die easily. We weren't made for easy deaths. We were made for hard lives on a hard world. We were made to endure." On the flagship Eternal Light, the medical team worked desperately to save the human soldier. They had never treated a human before. Their equipment was designed for bodies for crystal skin and slow metabolisms. Human bodies were different, strange, almost alien. Stood outside the medical bay, watching through a window. The doctors moved quickly, their long fingers dancing over their instruments, but their faces showed confusion, concern, amazement. One of them came out to speak with her. This should not be possible, the doctor said. His name was High Surgeon and he had practiced medicine for 300 years. The damage to her body is catastrophic, burns over 40% of her surface, multiple organ damage, massive blood loss. Any would be dead, any would be dead, any species we know would be dead. But she is not dead, said. No, she is not, shook his head slowly. Her body fights. I have never seen anything like it. Her cells are repairing themselves. Her heart keeps beating even though it should have stopped. Her brain continues to function despite the shock. What does this mean? Was quiet for a moment. It means that humans are not what the sacred texts say they are. It means that whatever created them, whatever world shaped them, it was not a gentle place. Their bodies are designed for damage, for pain, for survival against impossible odds. Remember the entry in the words of the Ascended, soft, brief-lived, fragile vessels of warm fluid. The texts are wrong, she said. Not wrong exactly. Humans are soft. They do bleed easily. Their lives are brief compared to ours. Looked through the window at the broken body on the table. But the texts missed something important. They missed the spirit inside the flesh. They missed the will that keeps the body moving when the body should stop. Later, Doctor arrived. She was the human physician from the delegation, and she pushed past the guards without apology. Her face was pale when she saw his condition, but her hands were steady as she began to work. They watched her, this small human woman, treating wounds that would have killed anyone else. She spoke commands in a calm voice. She adjusted the alien equipment to work with human biology. She worked for hours without stopping. Is she exceptional? One of the doctors asked. This soldier, is she special among your kind? Did not stop working. She's above average, strong, determined. But no, she's not unique. Any human in her position would have done the same. Impossible, the damage she took. Have you heard of mothers lifting vehicles off their children? Soldiers walking for days on broken legs? People surviving in the wilderness for weeks with no food? Looked at them with tired eyes. We do this, all of us. When the need is great enough, we become something more than our bodies. The doctor did not understand. How could he? His people lived for centuries. They did not need to pack so much life into so few years. They did not need to burn so brightly. Your kind calls us fragile, said, returning to her work. And you're right, we break easily. We get sick easily. We die easily, but we also heal. We adapt. We refuse to quit. She paused, looking down at still face. You want to know what humans really are? We're the species that looked at a universe full of bigger, stronger, smarter creatures and said, I don't care. I'm going to survive anyway. Outside the medical bay, sat down on the floor. She was exhausted, confused. Everything she had been taught about the galaxy, about other species, about the order of things, it was all being challenged. She took out her personal tablet and accessed the ancient database. The entry on humans was short, dismissive. A footnote caught her eye, something she had never noticed before. Unverified, reports of humans continuing to function after lethal damage. Deemed exaggeration, likely propaganda. Stared at those words for a long time. It was not exaggeration. It was not propaganda. It was simply what humans were. Hours passed, the doctors worked, and slowly, impossibly, Park stabilized. Her heart kept beating, her lungs kept breathing, her body kept fighting. When High Prelate came to see her, was still sitting outside. She did not stand when he approached. She did not bow. She lives? Asked. She lives. Was silent for a moment. His crystal face was unreadable, but his eyes, those 3 glowing eyes, showed something that might have been shame. I dismissed her, he said quietly. I called her fragile. I ignored her warnings. Yes, said, you did. The sacred texts. The sacred texts were wrong, stood now, facing the High Prelate directly. In 300 years of life she had never spoken to someone of his rank this way, But after what she had seen, rank seemed less important. The texts told us humans were nothing, but a human saved us. A human killed the render. A human took wounds that would have killed any and kept fighting. Had no response. For the first time in centuries, he had no words. Behind them, through the window, his eyes opened. Woke slowly like she was swimming up from deep water. Everything hurt. Her body felt like it was made of broken glass and fire, but she was awake. She was alive. She was lying in some kind of pod, a medical device she did not recognize. Blue light surrounded her and she could feel something working on her body, healing, repairing. It felt strange, like tiny fingers moving inside her skin. A face appeared above her, crystal skin, 3 eyes. "You are awake," the young said. Her voice was soft, almost afraid. "The doctors said you might not wake for days. They said your brain might be damaged, but you are awake." Tried to speak. Her throat felt like sand. "How long?" 14 hours since the battle. 14 hours. It felt like years. It felt like minutes. The others asked, "Ambassador." "Alive, wounded but alive. You saved him." Paused. "You saved all of us." Closed her eyes. The blue light was too bright. Everything was too much. "Rest," said. "The healing will take time." But did not leave. She stayed beside the pod, watching the human sleep. Hour after hour she stayed. The other came and went. Doctors checked the machines. Officers asked questions, but remained. One of her colleagues, a young male named, came to speak with her. "Why do you stay?" he asked. "She is just a human." Looked at him with cold eyes. "She is not just anything. She killed the render. She saved the high prelate. She did things that should not be possible. The doctors say she was lucky, that her wounds missed vital organs by chance." "Do you believe that?" Did not answer. He had seen the battle too. He had seen take the plasma bolt and get up. He had seen her fight after she should have died. Luck did not explain that. "The words of the Ascended say humans are fragile," said finally. "Are the texts wrong?" "I do not know, but I know what I saw." Turned back to the medical pod. "I saw a creature that refused to die. I saw flesh and blood and bone hold together through pure force of will. I saw something our gods never warned us about." The medical team worked for 3 days to stabilize fully. They had to adapt their equipment, their medicines, their entire approach. Human bodies were so different from their own. Where were crystalline and slow, humans were fluid and fast. Where regenerated over months, humans healed in weeks. High Surgeon became obsessed with understanding his patient. He ran scans and tests and analyses. He compiled data that no had ever gathered about human biology. "Remarkable," he muttered to himself, reviewing the results. "Absolutely remarkable." Doctor worked alongside him. She was the only one who truly understood human medicine, and she did not let them forget it. "Her adrenal system," said, pointing to a scan. "It flooded her body with chemicals during the battle. Chemicals that suppressed pain, increased strength, accelerated reaction time. Is this normal for humans?" "It's called the fight-or-flight response," explained. "When we're in danger, our bodies produce adrenaline. It lets us do things we normally couldn't." But the damage she took, the pain alone should have caused her body to shut down. Smiled sadly. "Humans can override pain. We can force ourselves to keep moving even when every nerve is screaming at us to stop. Our ancestors needed that ability. Our planet was dangerous. Predators hunted us. The environment tried to kill us. We learned to push through suffering because stopping meant death." Studied her with his 3 eyes. "Your planet sounds terrible." "It was, it is." Looked through the window at sleeping form. "But it made us who we are. Every hardship, every danger, every near-extinction event, it all shaped us. We're not strong because we had it easy. We're strong because we had it hard." Word spread through the ship about the human who would not die. Came to the medical bay just to look at her. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of respect. Some came because they did not believe the stories and wanted to see for themselves. Ambassador came on the second day. His leg was bandaged and he walked with a crutch, but he was there. "I owe you my life," he said to sleeping form, several times over apparently. Stood nearby. "She spoke highly of you," she said to the ambassador. "Before the battle, she said you were a good man, even if you did not always agree with her methods." Laughed softly, it hurt his ribs. "That sounds like her, always seeing the best in people." He paused. "I told her to stay quiet, to stay small, to not make trouble. She did not listen." "No, she never does." He looked at with something like pride. "When she was assigned to my delegation, I was worried. She had a reputation for being difficult, for not following orders, for doing things her own way. And now," was quiet for a moment, "now I understand that there is a difference between following orders and doing what is right. Sometimes they are the same thing, sometimes they are not." He touched his hand gently. "She always knew the difference. I should have trusted her." On the third day, High Prelate came to the medical bay. He came alone, without guards or aides. He stood outside the pod and looked at the small human inside. Watched him from across the room. She saw something she had never seen on his face before: doubt. "I have led for 200 years, said quietly. "I have made decisions that affected millions. I have trusted the words of the Ascended to guide me. They have never been wrong." He touched the surface of the medical pod. "Until now." "The texts were written long ago," said carefully. "Perhaps humans have changed since then." "No," shook his head. "Humans have not changed. The texts were simply incomplete." He was quiet for a moment. "Our people observed humans from a distance. We saw their short lives and soft bodies. We judged them based on what we could see. We never looked deeper. We never asked what made them survive on that terrible planet of theirs." "What will you do?" "Turn to face her. I will tell the truth. I will report what happened here. I will explain that the words of the Ascended, for all their wisdom, missed something important about humanity. The Council will not be pleased." "No, they will not." The ghost of a smile crossed his crystal features. "But as a wise human once showed me, sometimes doing what is right matters more than doing what is expected." Later that day, finally woke fully. The blue light had faded and she was lying in a normal bed, or what passed for normal on a ship. Everything still hurt, but the pain was distant now, like something happening to someone else. She turned her head and saw sitting beside her. "You stayed," said. Her voice was rough but stronger than before. "I did." "Why?" Considered the question. "Because I watched you die," she said finally. "I watched you get hit by a weapon that should have killed you instantly. I watched you fall, and then I watched you get up." Did not know what to say. "In 300 years of life, I have never seen anything like that," continued. "The words of the Ascended are supposed to contain all knowledge about all species, but they did not prepare me for you." "I'm not special," said. "Any human would have." "No," cut her off. "That is what everyone keeps saying. Your doctor says it. Your ambassador says it. Any human would do the same. As if that makes it less remarkable." She leaned forward. "Do you not understand? That is what makes it remarkable. If you were unique, we could dismiss you as an exception. But you're not. You're normal, typical, and if all humans can do what you did." She trailed off, but understood what she was not saying. If all humans could do what she did, then everything the thought they knew about humanity was wrong. "The texts call us fragile," said. "Yes. They're not wrong. We break easily, we bleed easily, we die easily." "But you got up." Looked at the ceiling. "We always get up, that's the only secret. We get knocked down and we get up, again and again and again, until we can't anymore." Was quiet for a long moment. "I would like to learn more," she said finally. "About humans, about your history, about how your species became what it is." Smiled, it hurt her face. "I'd like that too. Maybe we can teach each other something." Outside the medical bay, the stars continued to burn. The ship continued to move through space. And somewhere in the great databases of the Dominion, a change was coming to the words of the Ascended. Humans would not be listed as fragile anymore.